We thank Mayor Eisenberger for his participation in this annual Hamilton Chamber of Commerce tradition. We welcome his lovely wife, Diana, the First Lady of Hamilton, who also joins us here this morning. We also thank some council colleagues for being here today. And if you'd like to please stand up when I announce your names, that would be great. We have Councillor Chad Collins, Doug Conley, Councillor Jason Farr, Councillor Lloyd Ferguson, Councillor Aidan Johnson, Councillor Judy Partridge, and Councillor Rob Pasuda. Thank you very much for attending this morning. Really appreciate your support. And in addition, I'd also like to welcome Minister Ted McMeekin, and of course, Police Chief Glenn DeCare. I'm proud to be the chair of the board of the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, serving with a tremendous group of established and emerging leaders in the business community, many of whom are here this morning. So again, I'd like to acknowledge fellow board members that are here, and if you could also please stand when I call your name. We have Derek Doyle with the Young Entrepreneurs and Professionals Organization, part of the Chamber, Louis Grilly, David Kissick, our Vice Chair, John Pryke, Wendy Tompkins, Carmela Trombetta, Mary Williams, and Bruce Wood. Again, thank you very much for the support of the fellow board members. Now, you may have observed that the board of the Chamber has a relatively low profile, which is why we've hired a CEO that is no shrinking violet. For those of you who have met our President and CEO, Keenan Loomis, you know what I'm speaking about. We find great enjoyment in providing the strategic oversight that the Chamber staff needs to do the incredible things that they are doing on behalf of over 1,000 members. Now, as the Chamber plays an increasingly important role in the renewal of the city, the board is enjoying working with Keenan on the challenge of keeping a 170-year-old institution relevant in the 21st century. Now, when you look back over the last 5 years of the organization, when you look over the last 5 years, this organization, much like the city, has been through a lot of change. Despite that, the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce has never been so stable and relevant, and the future has never seemed as bright. And you can see by the increased buzz the Chamber is garnering in the community, the increasing membership, and the increased attendance at our events. Like this morning, which, thanks to all of you, is the biggest Mayor's State of the Union in the collective memory of anyone associated with the organization, which goes back a few decades. So thank you again for the fantastic attendance that we have here this morning. Now, despite record attendance, it would be a lot harder to pay the bills without the support of our two sponsors this morning. So I'd like to thank both Union Gas and Bell for sponsoring this morning's breakfast. And to introduce the mayor, it's my pleasure to call on Nicholas Clipp, a 24-year employee of Union Gas who has just assumed the role of Construction and Growth Manager for Hamilton and Halton District. Thank you, Chris.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before I introduce the mayor, I'd like to take a brief moment to talk about Union Gas. And I'm not going to apologize for the weather this morning. It's not our fault, but we will take the benefit of it. Union Gas, one of Canada's top 100 employers, and recently named as one of Canada's top employers for those over 40, is a proud partner in the City of Hamilton. Our involvement in the community is much more than just supplying clean, reliable, abundant natural gas to the community. We are also involved in many community initiatives through our Helping Hands charitable events and energy efficiency programs. We recently provided a check for $1,024,867 to City Housing Hamilton. Board Chair and Ward 5 Councillor Chad Collins accepted on behalf of the Board. The funds are courtesy of the Union Gas EnerSmart program, which offers incentives to its municipal, commercial, and industrial customers to implement projects that will use natural gas more efficiently, reducing energy costs and emissions. Through this funding, 11 high-rise multifamily buildings managed by City Housing Hamilton were retrofitted with measures such as make-up air units, heat recovery ventilators, heating and domestic hot water boilers, and building controls. Through the installation of 21 new high-efficiency boilers and 9 new make-up air units and energy-saving projects such as building automation systems, City Housing Hamilton will save more than $2 million over the lifespan of the new equipment. In addition, it will reduce its carbon monoxide emissions by 17,580 tons, or the equivalent of removing 3,396 cars from Ontario's road a year. So that's good news all around. Thank you. But now for the real reason I'm here, to introduce the mayor, Fred Eisenberger. Born in Amsterdam, good lad, and immigrating to Canada with his family when he was 8 years old, Fred attended school in Hamilton, graduating from Sir Winston Churchill Secondary School and then Mohawk College. His experience, vision, and leadership led him to a successful return to office as Hamilton's mayor in October of 2014. His passion for the city and plans for growth and prosperity support the desire to take Hamilton to new levels, firmly placing it as one of the 10 largest and most important municipalities in the country. As mayor in his previous term from 2006 to 2010, Fred worked with council to bring about a number of important initiatives, including a complete renovation of Hamilton City Hall, the Central Library, and the historic Farmers Market. He has championed the preservation of Hamilton's heritage, spearheading the purchase and renovation of the Lister Block, a landmark downtown building that now houses city staff. Fred's green initiatives include an anti-idling bylaw, the purchase of hybrid buses, the installation of bike racks on buses, and the setting of a robust target of 65% waste diversion from household garbage. After several years of debate, Fred worked with both the provincial and federal governments to gather financial support, $60 million in total, to assist with efforts to clean up Randall Reef in Hamilton Harbour, a toxic hotspot from the city's industrial past. Through his leadership, Fred was successful in encouraging his council colleagues to pass an annual $1.5 million increase to the city's economic development departmental budget. This helped bring about tangible results, including a new Tim Hortons coffee roasting facility in the Ancaster Business Park and securing Canada Bread as the anchor tenant in the city's Red Hill Business Park. He had a prominent role in helping to lead the successful bid process that resulted in the 2015 Pan Am Games coming to Hamilton. Fred has previously served as a member of City Council, chair of the Hamilton Port Authority, and as president and chief executive officer of the Canadian Urban Institute. His wife Diana and grown children Brett and Alita are proud community champions and are firmly focused on helping to improve the lives of residents throughout the city's diverse neighborhoods. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct pleasure on behalf of the 140 employees of Union Gas who work in the Hamilton District to introduce His Worship, Mayor Fred Eisenberger.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. I'm going to assume that this mobile mic is on. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you, and thank you for having me today. Thank you for such a great turnout. What a great morning. A little bit of snow, a little bit of a damper. You know, these events, somebody said, is usually done in January, so it feels a little like January at the moment. But hopefully, the sun will come up and the weather will be warmer. I'm very particularly happy to be here in this particular building. Mentioned I was originally born in Amsterdam, came here as an 8-year-old. My first touch of Hamilton was right here in this building. So the boat to Halifax, the train from Halifax to Hamilton, and then this was my first brush with Hamilton. And it's kind of passing ironic for me, and certainly makes my heart skip a beat that I have the privilege after that history to stand here before you as mayor and be able to work with all of you to make our city a spectacular place to be. It's just an honor and a privilege. So thank you for that honor and privilege. Happy to be here with Minister McMeekin, Ted. Obviously an interesting day today. We've got a budget coming up a little later on, and you know, I do walk around with my fingers crossed. We're hopeful that some good news will come out of that budget for Hamilton, and no doubt there will be some good news. Don't know what it is, and I'm not going to ask you specifically, but we will find out later on. I don't want to put you on the spot. Happy to be here with my council colleagues. Mentioned earlier, you know what, whatever I say today, you know what, it's all about collaboration and collective vision and working together. That's really the mantra that we need to continue to evolve, and that's always been my approach, and I'm going to make sure that that continues. What's also important, though, and I've heard some comments today that, you know what's Eisenberger's vision going to be for my neighborhood? Or, you know, what is the grand Eisenberger doctrine I heard a little while ago or in the paper yesterday? You know, I'm not going to outline a doctrine. I'm not going to talk about anybody's neighborhood. I may not mention your company or your corporation. It doesn't mean you don't matter. It all matters, but I have about 20 minutes, and I can't fit everybody into 20 minutes. So everybody matters. Every organization, whether it's public health or Hamilton Hydro or the airport, you know, it is all part of the matrix of what makes up Hamilton. Clearly, it's all important, and we're going to make sure that we work with all of you to realize the potential of all of it. There we go. So, just to begin, you know, last month we had the opportunity to kick off a great event in Hamilton, the Juno Awards. What a great opportunity to turn it on in Hamilton. There were fantastic events happening throughout the city, lots of entertainment, music everywhere, and of course culminating in a great night on Sunday with the Juno Awards themselves. And it really is a kind of a testament to what it means to collectively support the arts in our community. It was a great opportunity for us to turn it on. And you know what? Our challenge going forward is how do we turn it on collectively each and every day for our city as we move forward. So how do we do that? Well, we have some key areas that we want to focus on, and we do have momentum right now. Momentum that we need to kind of foster and turn into results. And so I believe it's important that we find the balance of equal focused on further development and celebrating our successes in the moment. We have much to be proud of. We can look around our city and see lots of good things that are going on, and I'll talk about those a little bit. But we need to have some focus, and we need to find ways of realizing the potential of the momentum that we currently have. Got to remember there's a little delay here. I'll work on that. So some of the key areas that I want to talk to you about today are economic development, transit, our infrastructure, and poverty reduction and affordable housing. I think these are the key priorities that the city has identified as its key priorities. It's certainly something that I believe are our key priorities. And it's all of these areas are actually important to the future growth of our city. On the economic development front, very pleased that our city decided collectively to endorse a $500,000 infusion this year for the arts. And you know, for me, the arts is about economy. It's about jobs. It's about not only creating the creative culture that makes our city vibrant, but there are jobs and economic opportunities that come out of the arts. So an investment in the arts is critically important. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Our waterfront's important. U.S. Steel lands is passing important as well, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And the airport employment lands that we've recently finished, thanks to the good work of some great staff, is equally important as well as we move forward for the future. But the arts, let's talk a little bit about the arts. You know what? What's transformed James Street North and Locke Street and a number of other areas has been the kind of arts and cultural capacity that's taken that to a whole different level. So our investment in the arts continues to be a very important feature of how we grow our economy. The Dundas Carnegie Museum and other places throughout our city all are part of a great mosaic that makes our city vibrant, but also makes our city a great opportunity to have arts be part of our economy. On the waterfront side, as you know, and as this picture will demonstrate, we are moving from vision to actual reality. So for a long, long time, we've been opining about and working towards and creating the atmosphere that would actually create development opportunities. And as we see it today, those development opportunities are actually now being realized. So we're closer to shovel ready. So on, if I can get to the picture here as I see it on my screen, if you look off to the right, the Pier 8 area, that work is now being done to put the services in to actually get to development there. Mid-rise, residential, commercial development is in the offing. Pier 7 and 8 Marina management agreement has been agreed to and negotiated with the Hamilton Port Authority. Piers 5 and 7 are, the master plan is currently being developed and is in the implementation stage. The pipeline relocation on Piers 7 and 8 is actually on the move. It's getting changed. All of it towards development ready in the near future. The Barton Tiffany lands, which are a little further along, that's straddling the shunting yards. That's that little sliver in between Bayfront Park and the Tiffany lands, that the big yellow area there, are also in the process of being identified as development-ready lands in the very near future. So we're moving from vision to actual reality, things that can actually be done on the ground. And as I said on many occasions, I want to live on Pier 8. My wife here may not agree with me just yet, but I want to live on Pier 8. By the way, Diane is here. Now, Diane is an avid supporter of the Paint the Town Red and the Bob Kemp Hospice. If you're all tapped out in terms of making contributions to a cause, don't make eye contact with Diane, because if you do, you're done. So she'll be hawking tickets for the Bob Kemp Hospice fundraiser coming up, Paint the Town Red, coming up in a few weeks. I just warn you, don't make eye contact or you're going to be contributing, and that would be a good thing. So the waterfront is on the move, and then as we know, the U.S. Steel has put up all of its lands on the waterfront, on the bayfront, for sale. So we could all lament that no one wants to chase steel making out of our city, but the possibility is that some of the steel making that we used to enjoy is going to change and transform, and I think that really starts to talk about a potential opportunity to look at some shifting of uses and resources to some of the industrial lands that we've currently been in steel making that could now potentially be a partnership, and I'm visioning here, between the Port Authority, possibly a move of the CN shunting yards into a multimodal facility along the port. Obviously a lot of private sector involvement, and how that all plays out is yet to be seen, but it is an emerging opportunity that we need to stay on top of, which is why the City of Hamilton signed a non-disclosure agreement, as have many others. All of it geared towards what future use is this land going to be turned into, and it's really then an emerging opportunity that we ought to make sure that we stay on top of. The Airport Employment Growth District, as you may know, has been in the works for a long, long time, and I do have to congratulate our planning staff, and specifically Guy Paparella. I'm not sure if he's here, but he has been working this file for probably the last 20 years. It's been almost a career for him in terms of getting this into place. Critically important that 500 hectares or thereabouts in and around the airport are going to be useful for us down the road for future commercial industrial applications. So we could say we're open for business. If we don't have places for the business to go, then we're not truly open for business. And the airport employment lands is going to be a critical part of our future employment opportunities as we go forward. Predominantly identified in, starting in some time in and around, planning for sometime in around 2031 or 2040. So long-range planning, but planning that we need to do to ensure that we have shovel-ready lands for future employment use. And as we know, one of our difficulties is the lost commercial industrial tax base. So as we go forward, we need to find ways of recapturing some of that industrial tax base, or else the pressure on the residential taxpayer, which is now at about a 90%, 10% balance, maybe a little different. The number changes from day to day, but it's high. So 90% of our tax base is now residential, 10% is commercial industrial. We need to turn that number around and get it into a larger commercial industrial tax base balance. So the airport employment lands are important, and they are actually ready to go. The OMB challenge has been settled. Second to that, transit. So as Minister McMeekin's sitting here, you know that even though there's been some divergent opinions, my personal view is, and the city's official position is, that light rail transit is going to be of enormous benefit for our city for a number of reasons. One of them is that we can move more people more quickly. That's important. It'll be more environmentally friendly. So electrified transportation is clean for our environment. And it also provides the city of Hamilton to get significant economic uplift along the corridor that will house the rail. So with rail comes investment. It's something that unfortunately doesn't happen to the same degree with bus. So rail and all the renewal and economic uplift that comes with it is very critically important for our future city. And I'm hopeful that the province of Ontario will realize a visionary investment in the city of Hamilton is not only good for Hamilton, but it's good for the province of Ontario, and we'll see how that rolls out later today. So we'll all wait here with bated breath. Of course, that's not to exclude our bus infrastructure. So the city of Hamilton just recently invested on the short term $6 million and has actually hired a number of more bus operators to enhance our bus transit system. And the whole idea has not been just about a single corridor along King Street. It's all about expanding the service throughout the entire city. And so critically important that we do that. And of course, we're recent news about the all-day GO service, and great news that the province of Ontario has invested some $60 million in a station not too far from here, and that will add additional trains to the city of Hamilton. But I also understand the problem that we have in terms of the CN and GO intersection just the other side of the shunting yards near the high-level bridge. A pretty significant barrier to getting all-day GO services coming to Hamilton and ultimately to Niagara. And so at some point, and maybe the upcoming funding will address that grade separation, which will be expensive, but I think important, Minister McMeekin, to ensure that we can get the full benefit of capacity of GO service coming all the way to Hamilton and all the way to Niagara. So hopefully all-day GO service sooner rather than later, but maybe a little longer than we might have anticipated originally. Personally, I think it's understandable, but the investment in that grade separation will make a huge difference. And lastly, let me say that the citizen engagement process that I ran on and thought would be critically important in terms of how we deal with future transit has been approved by council. I think it's a citizens jury process that brings in residents from the entire city of Hamilton to have a look at our entire transit system and give us some advice about either location of LRT, area rating, and how that might apply to providing transit in all areas of our city and how that's paid for. So some good advice from residents to talk about that. And you know, critically important that we bring citizens into the picture. So, you know, with the people, we can do everything. And without the people, we can't do very much. So we need them on board. So let's get citizens engaged, not only in this process, but in terms of developing an entire vision for the city of Hamilton. I think I've talked about that. And I've talked about that. So there's some interesting pictures of the citizens jury process and how that might work. And it is a jury process. So, you know, from my perspective, if it's okay to pick a jury for criminal issues and life and death issues, then certainly it's okay to randomly pick people in our broader community to come and have a look at transit issues. So I'm very high and very keen on making sure that our citizens continue to participate. Another critical piece of how we're moving forward, though, is workforce development. And I'm delighted that our council actually approved the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Task Force on workforce development. One of the gaps that we know and see is that there's a disconnect between what the industry needs and the training that's actually happening in colleges and universities in terms of applied sciences and applied work in our community. So we have industry complaining about they can't get the skilled, trained individuals to do some of the work that they need to do, that are industries in our community that absolutely need those skills. So we're going to have a look at, and grateful that Ron McCurley, president of Mohawk, is going to co-chair this task force with a number of others in our community to start talking about how we address that particular issue. So there's a match between the kind of industries that we're attracting here and the kind of skills that they're going to need to actually deliver the goods that they're proposing to create here in our community. So we're going to do some great work there. We are reaching out into the global community in terms of new business opportunities. Global Hamilton is a well-developed organization by the City of Hamilton that brings in diverse community business people from with a global reach that starts talking about how can we reach out into those other nations and other communities around the world and deliver opportunities back to Hamilton that can be part of our future commercial industrial tax base. So the Global Hamilton and foreign direct investment is going to be very important as we move forward, and there's a good group of people that are helping us do that work. And so we did prove our capital budget. Somebody asked, you know, what's one of your greater achievements in the first, has it been 3 months? 3 months or so. You know, the moment you get elected, you're right into the budget process. So I want to thank Mike Segarek and all of our senior management team for a lot of great work. It's always a challenging, difficult process, but we have achieved, and we have, I think, achieved some great successes in terms of how we deliver this budget. So a modest increase, 2-point-something%, a little varied in terms of where you are in different parts of our community, but some very specific investments in roads maintenance, and I don't have to tell any of you that there's a critical issue there. Certainly after a bad winter, we need to invest more and more into our roads capacity. Growth-related improvements in roads as well. Additional monies for transit, very important as we grow our transit system. And some additional dollars for the West Harbour strategic initiatives that I talked about earlier in terms of how we need to roll out the new improved West Harbour redevelopment area, which will require some services, and that's what that money is for. So pleased to see that budget's passed. Also pleased to see the investment into the arts. I talked about that earlier. This particular budget, in my mind, focuses on getting away from using reserve dollars for balancing a short-term budget. Not a particularly good strategy to have, and there's been some reliance on that in the past, and we're moving away from that, and I think that's very helpful. It's also predominantly focused in on growth. So how do we make sure that we have the right manpower, the right people in place to ensure that we receive and welcome and have open arms to the kind of growth opportunities that is going to be so important for the City of Hamilton. So we want to make sure that we're open for business. We have added additional employees, about 130 of them, but I have to tell you that 31 of them were paramedics, and we've had a range of paramedic responses throughout our city that just isn't sustainable. So all too often we have code red scenarios where we have to actually bring in ambulances from other areas because all of our ambulances are tied up. So we've made an investment on more ambulances and more paramedics, critically important for the health and well-being of our citizens. We've added 51 bus operators and about 25 more buses, which expands our reach in terms of our transit operations. Additional Ontario Work staff to ensure that we're able to process the very challenging caseload that we currently have that also seems to be increasing, and without the proper manpower, we're just not going to be able to process folks through the process quickly enough, and we want to make sure that happens. And the rest of the staffing was all focused in on planning. And it's been my view that planning has been understaffed for quite some time, and clearly we've taken the opportunity to get the staffing level up to an area where we can make sure that the applications that come in can get processed as quickly as humanly possible. So our permit application numbers have gone up significantly, and our staffing component has not. Having said that, I'll talk a little bit more about open for business and what we're going to be doing there. Last piece in this area is our infrastructure. So we are in a bit of an infrastructure bind, and you know we're not alone in this. So we are, as staff had reported earlier, probably in the middle of the pack in terms of our infrastructure deficit, but it's an infrastructure deficit nonetheless. And so, you know what, we're, $885 million of long-term debt, which sounds particularly ominous, but we're still rated as AA stable, which means that we're managing that debt very effectively, thanks to the good work of our financial team. But notwithstanding that, we are each and every year $195 million behind in our broader infrastructure work. So we need to do more. We were able to put 0.5% more onto the capital budget to start to address that. I think there needs to be more. But there also needs to be, I think, a working partnership with other levels of government to ensure that we can collectively deal with getting at that issue. And, collective responsibility in this is basically provincial, federal, and municipal. And so it would be great if we could have another infrastructure program to help bolster those numbers. And I do know that the province of Ontario has also made an added commitment of taking 0.5% or 5% of GDP as an infrastructure, which is a bump up from about 2.5%. $130 billion towards infrastructure, which is an absolutely incredible number and a beneficial one. We need to find ways of partnering not only with the province, but encouraging the federal government to step into that area as well, because the entire country is actually hampered by that infrastructure deficit. And lastly, the poverty reduction and affordable housing. So we have a strategy developed over the last 10 years for homelessness action plan, a comprehensive solution-focused and person-centered plan to guide decision-making on how the Hamilton community will address affordable housing and homelessness issues into the future. So again, through provincial federal investment in affordable housing funding, we've been able to create 82 new affordable rental units that are currently under development. So we expect that we could probably do 100 more in the next few years. And we certainly want to thank Minister McMeekin for his passion on that particular issue. I know it's social issues and housing and homelessness has been a passion for you, and we thank you for your funding support. But we also need to continue working on making sure that we do not forget about our friends in this category. And so we've got two projects happening. The Rudy Holst Commons, it's a new building happening out in the East End. And not far away from that is the Perkins Center, both of which are being developed by the Indwell housing project coordinator. We used to be the Homestead Christian Care facilities. We're doing a great job in providing living spaces that not only support people, but also help them in terms of seeking health, wellness, and belonging. So great work on their part and great work on the province's part to actually partner with us on some funding opportunities. Also nice to know that some folks in our community that are getting benefit of either OW services or housing services are actually grateful. So we had some interesting picketers not too long ago actually not protesting what's being given to them, but actually thanking the city, the province, and the federal government for the help and assistance that they're getting, which is I think a welcome and pleasant surprise to have somebody actually say for a change, thank you, which is great. But we need to continue to make sure that we continue to focus on their issues. So the City of Hamilton has promised to take part in the 20,000 Homes campaign, which is a national campaign advocating on behalf of homelessness to ensure that 5,500 families in Hamilton at some point can get off the waiting list and get onto some affordable housing. That is something that we can't let go of, that we need to continue to focus on, and we need to find creative ways of addressing those issues. So we need to make building new moderately priced housing opportunities attractive for not only developers, but for all parts of our community. And inclusionary zoning is part of that, and I think whatever we develop, we need to ensure that there's, thank you for that. Who's clapping there? Somebody dropped something. Sorry. I thought it was applause. Feel free anytime. Inclusionary zoning. So for the waterfront, I think Councillor Collins and others have actually said we need to make sure that when we develop our waterfront into attractive housing, that inclusionary zoning would also allow some affordable housing in that mix to make sure that we provide all categories of housing in neighborhoods that we develop. So we thank the city for continuing to sponsor that, and we'll get behind that as well. No place would be great if we didn't have great police protection and police services, a secure and safe community. And I'm happy to say that through the leadership of Chief DeCare, the Police Services Board, and others, we are actually making some great inroads in terms of making our community safer by the day. So saying we have 3,000 fewer arrests in Hamilton last year doesn't sound too glamorous, but it's actually quite significant. That means that we are actually working on the preventative side better than we ever have before, and that has been the continuing focus of our police services. And I just want to thank the chief and all of the rank and file police in our community for doing such a great job. It is a tough job, a thankless job, but an important job because our community needs to be safe. With safety, we can actually prosper. And then lastly, intergovernment relations. So important that we continue to foster great relationships with our friends in the province and the federal government. And that's an active file for me. It's something that's critically important as we go forward. None of this can happen without our federal provincial partners, so we want to make sure that we continue to foster those great relationships. And I'm happy to say I have met this Premier 4 times in the last 3 months, which is probably 4 times more than I met the previous Premier. And I'm not knocking the previous Premier, but I can tell you that the open door approach and the interaction between the provincial government and the City of Hamilton and all municipalities has been better than I've ever seen it in my entire political career. So you know what, I have to give hats off to the Premier of Ontario and the ministers, because they're actually doing a terrific job of making sure that they're listening to municipalities where most of the action is these days. And then we have the stadium. Every time I talk about stadium, I feel like I need to go into therapy, but that's a whole other issue. Whole other issue. Stadium will be finished, and we certainly believe it will be this year. Thank you for that. Who's clapping? Diane, thank you, that's right. My best supporter, thank you so much. She's been part of my therapy, actually. You know what, it's been a journey. You know, I had a tour of the stadium the other day. It is looking spectacular. Yes, there are some things that have to be sorted out, and you know, the timelines are tight. But we are going to we have an occupancy permit. It is going to be spectacular now that it is almost done. There are some other things that we have to do, and of course Pan Am is looming. So we'll get occupancy. We'll have to transform the stadium into a non-Tim Hortons facility because Tim Hortons is not a sponsor of Pan Am. So there's a lot of work to do between now and the upcoming Pan Am Games. But you know, at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, you are going to love this stadium. And hopefully, we will be able to open the doors before Pan Am starts for everyone to come in and have a tour and have a look at what their $60 million and the contribution and the federal government's contribution has actually provided the City of Hamilton, which is a great new stadium. I'm not going to get into location. It's great where it is, and that's where it's going to stay. Pan Am is on the horizon, and you know what? Pan Am is going to be a spectacular event, and a spectacularly affordable event, which is terrific for the City of Hamilton. $10 to $20 for all of the soccer games that are happening, save and except maybe the final game. There are going to be a lot of games in Hamilton. Soccer is the biggest part of Pan Am. It's all happening right here in Hamilton, and I think it's going to be absolutely fabulous. So look forward to that in early July 10th through the 26th. If you don't have tickets yet, you better hurry and get them now because I think they're going to sell out quickly. It's going to be a great few weeks of the world coming to Hamilton and celebrating soccer and sports and entertainment in our city. Great time to highlight our city as well. Great, many successes in the City of Hamilton, of course. How long have I gone on here? I better hurry up. Let me jump a few slides here. Some of the successes, the Fraunhofer Institute with McMaster and the Mark Research Facility are going to be great future research that hopefully will turn into great products in the City of Hamilton coming forward. That's going to be a great success. Good things happening at Mohawk College in terms of their 3D lab. You know, the 3D printing process, which is fascinating to me, is absolutely astounding in terms of what it might do. And McMohawk, and the investment that they got from the federal government has allowed them to do a manufacturing resource center, or an additive manufacturing resource center, which I think is going to be a terrific future research and hopefully product production right here in Hamilton. That happens to be a little trinket they make through laser printing, which is interesting. It's not a product that you can sell, but it's a chess piece that has a staircase down the middle of it, which is absolutely fascinating to me. That's what laser printing, 3D printing can do for you. And we've had many economic successes, and I'm going to skip through a lot of these because I think we're taking long. And one of them is, let me go back one here, was the Mark and the Mohawk and all the research that's happening here. But secondarily, you know, some of the current successes are the existing businesses that we have here. And Picone's Fine Foods, I'm not picking on Dundas for any particular reason, Mr. McMeekin, not that you live there or are close to there. You're Waterdown, aren't you? But you represent Dundas. And I wanted to pick Dundas as an example of good business. Yes, Picone, Fine Foods, been there for 100 years, delivering great food, organic products, and prepared foods throughout the community. You know, a philosophy of providing good service was actually developed by their grandfather, and that philosophy has stayed with their family for 100 years. That's the kind of business that we also want to continue to promote and foster in our community. Small to medium-sized business is going to be the foundation of our future prosperity and our future growth. Congratulations to Picone. So we are open for business. We want to make sure that we modernize municipal government, that we modernize service delivery, and I think it's important. You might want to ask me about open for business a little later on in terms of process. But we also want to make sure that we have an active and interactive developing relationship with businesses in our community. So our aim is to be open for business. Hasn't always been the case in terms of process, and we want to make sure that the process is predictable, efficient, and that there aren't any barriers to welcoming new opportunities or growing opportunities in our community. So the focus for us is to make sure that we are truly open for business from a planning and process perspective, and that's going to be a continuing focus for us going forward. That's why we've actually added additional folks in the planning staff. So, what truly says we're open for business is the Hamilton, Ontario lunch. I love this part. This is my favorite, and I'll be brief. So the Hamilton, Ontario lunch actually starts with a couple of pieces of Dempster's bread, made right here in Hamilton at Canada Bread up off of Rymal Road. You might want to add a couple of slices of ham or turkey, whatever your preference is, made right here in Hamilton. You can have this lunch anywhere in Canada, but made right here in Hamilton. You can add, here it comes, a little mustard. G.S. Dunn, dry mustard from and Miller's that produced right here in Hamilton as well. Of course, any sandwich wouldn't be complete without some cheese. Cheese developed right here in Hamilton at the Salerno plant, and a little after, always good to have a little yogurt thereafter, so Gailey, right on Parkdale Avenue, good and well-developed businesses in our community. And of course, top it all off with a little Tim Hortons coffee. Get your roasted beans right up here in Ancaster, the roasting bean facility for the entire province, if not the entire country. And there isn't a slide for this, but if you want a treat after that, we have Karma Candy delivering candy throughout Canada, being developed right here in Hamilton. So for me, the strategy for the city of Hamilton is actually very simple. Focus on smart economic growth and jobs and continue to create efficiencies as an administration. Invest in our infrastructure in partnership with other levels of government, and be ready to accept bold and innovative solutions towards building a sustainable, prosperous, vibrant, and livable city. That's our strategy. That's how we're going to move forward. Thank you for listening. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We appreciate you being here, and if you could stay for a couple questions. Thank you, Ted. Great to have you here, and we look forward to some good announcements today, Ted. Let's come over here.
I just got a standing ovation from Ted. Don't know what that means.
Have a seat.
I noticed nobody else stood up, though. That's not taking names, but.
So we have question cards on the table, and I invite the audience members to ask some questions. We have chamber staff circulating as well, and they will bring it up to me. But I wanted to start with a few. We got a few time for a few questions. Give us, there's always talk about the first 100 days of an administration. It's kind of a cheeky thing, but the point is we're still very early into your administration. Give us an assessment of how things are going so far.
I'm having fun. Yeah, it's good. You know what? I think. I don't really measure my kind of performance in that. I think it's for other people to measure. But we've passed a good budget in collaboration with council. A citizen engagement process is underway, which is, I think, critically important. We've had some back and forth on transit, and hopefully we'll get some sort of an indicator today as to what transit future we have for the city of Hamilton. Great working relationship with council, a great group of leaders, in fact, that have been agreeable. We can disagree on, issues from time to time, but, we can do it without being disagreeable, and that's been the pattern so far, and I'm delighted by that. So I've got a lot of good friends on council, and we're working together well. And so that, for me, it was all about fostering good relationships in the beginning. Not only with council, staff, but with our other partners, the federal and provincial government. So for me, it's on track.
Excellent. I was going to ask you, what are you doing differently this time around? Is it in fostering those close relationships?
No, I did exactly the same thing before. I might be approaching it a little differently from the sense of I don't want to get everything done at once. So I'm a little bit more of an incrementalist at this point. Maybe I might have been a little too aggressive last time, put a lot on the agenda. I'm going to be a little bit more measured this time in terms of making sure that we don't take more on that we can chew.
So bad timing on the province's part, scheduling the budget release after the mayor's breakfast. We had this in the calendar first. Obviously, the conversation might change if we were to have this, at 5 o'clock over cocktail hour. Do you have any indication? Are there any expectations for today? What's coming down the pike?
Don't know. He just left. Timely that he just left. But these, I can't tell you. I don't know. I literally don't know. Am I hopeful that a visionary investment in transit is on the horizon for Hamilton? Yes. I'm encouraged by the signals that I've heard, but I've not heard anyone say the money's there for you and it's going to be done, unlike what they did in Mississauga or Barrie or Brampton. So I can't answer. The province will give us an indicator later on. If it doesn't happen today, I am forever hopeful that they understand the value of that investment for Hamilton.
So right now you have 2 speeches written.
Yes.
Depending on what happens today.
Well,
Okay.
it may not be today. So I mean, they may give us an indicator that there's something in the offing, but it may not be today.
Okay. So if we do get LRT, or if there's some funding coming from the province, talk to us a little bit about the citizens jury. Where are we in that creation, and what's your vision, and what's the timing on this?
Well, so it's the terms of reference are being developed right now, and then the selection process will happen. And so I expect that they'll be up and running in the next couple of months. There'll be a facilitator taken on, which some folks in the community might be actually bidding for. And then we'll get on with the business of looking at the entire transit system. And depending on what the announcement is today, we'll either focus on LRT and routing and how that kind of lays out and plays out into the future, and we'll look at area rating. And area rating is a significant part of this. So it's one of the last kind of outstanding issues in terms of the variance between tax delivery between the suburban communities and the former urban community of the city of Hamilton. So we have to figure out who and who should not pay for our entire transit system. And in my view, it may break down into urban and rural, but we'll see how that plays out.
Okay. So we have many, many councillors here today, and
Actually, I want to know how many, because we may have quorum.
Yeah,
which means we have.
I think we have.
We have an
quorum.
illegal meeting, and we all have to disperse.
Well, it's public, so I think we're okay.
Maybe.
We're covered there. And this is the highest attended mayor's breakfast ever. So, one of the things I've kind of felt and noticed over the last little bit is compared to last year and previous years, there's a lot of goodwill. People want to see you succeed. We want to see you succeed, and we're doing everything we can as a chamber and the board and the members, obviously council out here. How do we harness that goodwill for momentum?
Exactly what we're doing today. I mean, it's not, so from my view is that it's not about me and it's not necessarily about council. It's about our collective work together in terms of how we move everything forward. So partnerships with the Chamber and McMaster and Mohawk and the Hamilton Hydro and the Port Authority, you know, all of that really speaks to how do we engineer and collaborate with one another to kind of get the best results that we possibly can. And I mean, who doesn't want to succeed? We all want to succeed, but we're on a great curve though. And I think, you know, this has been a long time coming for Hamilton. I think we have now got a good buzz going, not only in Hamilton, but outside of Hamilton. People see Hamilton as a place to be. And it's our challenge to make sure that we continue on that path and not trip over, you know, issues that could cause that to go off the rails. So we're on a great trajectory, and the trick is not to mess it up.
That's right. Okay, so first question from the audience. What American or international city would you like to see as a model for Hamilton waterfront development, and why?
Well, the most logical one is actually Pittsburgh. There are a lot of similarities in terms of what they've done in Pittsburgh that we could mirror, although the dynamics are a little different. Their former steel industry was virtually downtown, right on the river, and they've been able to transform that into kind of downtown-related commercial, industrial, residential development. But the path for them was the same in the sense that an industry was there. They decided to depart. They still have some steel industry there, but they've actually found a way of transforming themselves into a waterfront, riverfront development community that really talked about people-oriented entertainment, residential, very close to and tied to their downtown, which is exactly the scenario that we're trying to develop here. So there's a synergy between what happens on the waterfront and what happens for our downtown, and there's a spillover effect between the two. So it's going to benefit both. It may actually start to transform our knowledge and our understanding of what downtown is, which I think will ultimately include the waterfront. And so I see Pittsburgh as a good model of where they've gone on the waterfront side, but also a good model in terms of what they've done to transform their economy. They've actually gone into pharmaceuticals and biomedical research. They've done a lot of research-oriented things. There's one for you. That left behind by some benefactors, the Mellon family and the Carnegie family, who were champions of industry back in the day, left a lot of dollars and resources behind to actually get into other areas of research that are now turning into product development and employment for them going forward. And we have the same kind of elements happening here. So it's very encouraging, actually.
Related to that, you talked about CN and the possibility of moving the shunting yards. I think Terry Cook said that even when God calls, they don't answer. Have you talked to CN? Are we hopeful of this?
Terry said that? Where is he? I thought Terry was God. He's a god on the squash court. At least in his own mind, he is. Yeah. You know what? There are ongoing discussions happening with a whole bunch of players, and you know, it's a little premature to kind of lay out what may be or possible. I think CN, to my understanding, has been more responsive than they have been in the past. And I think for good reason. I mean, the kind of the landscape is changing. I mean, their rationale in terms of business in Hamilton is transforming as well. You know, a lot of goods, materials came in by rail for the steel industry. Well, almost half of that is now kind of disappeared. It's impacted the port. It will impact rail. So what are their future needs going to be? So, and is it in their interest to be part of a multimodal transportation effort? That might include shipping, that might include rail, and then obviously involves airport and other modes of transportation, including trucking. So how we package that and converge that is going to be critically important. So I think they're more open to discussion these days than they have been in the past.
Okay. Another question from the audience. By the way, Mrs. Eisenberger said I could ask really hard questions, so I'm assuming that goes out to all the audience members as well. But we'll stay at the waterfront. What is the update on Randall Reef and the new gasification plant?
The Randall Reef is heading towards beginning, so I think some of the issues that previously stopped this from moving forward have been sorted out. Largely financial, but the partnership is there. The Halton has put in dollars, Burlington's put in dollars, we put in dollars, and has the federal and provincial government. So the funds are there. It was now about right-sizing that funding to the work that needs to be done, and I think there's an expectation that shovels will hit the water sometime later this year.
Okay, and the gasification plant?
It's in process in terms of, we've asked the Ministry of the Environment to do a full environmental assessment on that. That was Council's direction, which I think is a smart move. So they're in concert with the Port Authority. There is efforts being made to make sure that we do the entire environmental picture so we know exactly what this facility is all about. And then we'll see from there at what the province is going to do in terms of approving their certificate of approval. So the approval doesn't lie with the City of Hamilton, it actually lies with the Ministry of the Environment. And we're making sure that all the steps are being taken to ensure that whatever they're proposing is actually clean and going to be beneficial for our taxpayers going forward.
And when you're evaluating which way you're going to vote, what are your criteria? What are you looking for?
For me, it's looking at our entire waste management system and coming up with a choice that would actually give us the greatest benefit. For me, the worst possible scenario is to throw everything into a landfill hole, because that is environmentally damaging not only for the short term, but for a long, long time beyond that. And you know, our experience with landfills is not a good one. And it's the gift that keeps on giving in a very bad way for 100 years. So for me, look for alternatives. And if those alternatives are clean and there's some residual benefit that comes out of that, I think it's an alternative that we have to look at.
Okay. Let's get back to open for business. You addressed it a little bit within your presentation. So the city has thus far undertaken a very extensive internal review of some of the ways that the city can improve some of the obstructions. But there really hasn't been a lot of movement since then, as far as I can see. We have a report coming out, apparently. Where are we in open for business, and how do we get that process moving along quicker?
Well, I think it is moving along, and you know what? The report will be the kind of the beginning of the fundamental changes. Changes will happen over time. You know, I don't think we can expect that you know, one day you have some barriers and the next day they're all gone. But we all understand and now come to understand where the barriers are. So this report will highlight that. Be very beneficial, and then we'll have to map out a strategy in how we tackle that issue. And some of it is cultural, which is, you know, a challenging thing to deal with, and you know, attitude matters in terms of, you know, whether the applicant gets a welcoming response or a grumpy why are you here response. Those are some of the kind of fundamental issues that you have to work through over time. So it's a commitment for me. I know it's a commitment for the city manager. I know it's a commitment for the planning staff and council, quite frankly, that we deal with this now in a very active, proactive, direct way, not just talk about it and leave a report, but actually take some significant action. So I think you can expect shortly after the report lands that we're going to take some significant steps to make change.
One of the most encouraging things I found in the budget was the Open for Business coordinator. I think, you know, structurally one of the things was there was nobody in the city that actually was charged with overseeing the whole process. So now we have that.
Yeah, and somebody needs to drive this, and in the absence of that, it's something that everybody does a little bit of, with one specific identified coordinator whose mandate is to make sure that everything that we talk about actually happens. Will actually make this thing move effectively, and hopefully before too long, we will be a predictable, open for business, permit and application-friendly community.
I have another question here. This is actually from Twitter. What is the mayor's view on investing some city money on LRT? Let's say we don't get the whole thing from the province. Where would we go next?
Well, I really don't want to go down that road, because I'm still looking for 100% capital funding from the province, as they've promised innumerable times. So I think that's a smart investment on their part. It's a promise they've made, you know, successive 3 or 4 elections now. Don't think I want to let them off the hook in any way, shape, or form. And you know, it's always been, you know, they would invest 100% of capital in the basic system. So if we want to enhance that system, then there may be some need for us to put additional dollars in. But we won't know that until design is done, and in terms of, you know, whether we have the money or not. And then do the design, and then decide if there's additional dollars that need to be added down the road. It doesn't have to be, but it could be.
Okay. You talked about government relations. In your first term, we had this thing called Team Hamilton, which was a collection of many of the elected representatives and other key leaders in the community. That has been dormant for a while. You talked about government relations and what you want to do in terms of talking to the province and the federal government. Talk to us about what the structure is going to look like this time around.
I want to bring back the same structure, in fact. I thought it was very beneficial, and there's some reluctance on some people's parts to participate, but I think, everyone that's elected in the city of Hamilton needs to be part of the work that we do to make the improvements that we need to have happen. So whether you're NDP or Conservative or Liberal, doesn't really matter to me. They're all elected here. They're all representing Hamilton. So we all need to partner up in terms of the issues that we're dealing with, and they need to be advocates for our city going forward. So I promised that shortly after the budget, which is now, that we would reinstitute the Team Hamilton approach and then keep that going for the next 4 years.
Okay. Another question from the audience. Your Hammont lunch story was interesting. Is the city actively pursuing the agricultural food processing industries purposely?
Yes, very much so. And what part of that was Canada Bread, and part of that was Maple Leaf Meats. It's also Heimlicher Parish on the waterfront that's supplying a lot of the flour. And I think the opportunity for Hamilton, 75% of our land mass is agricultural. It's a huge agricultural opportunity for us. With the Greenbelt legislation in place, it protects a lot of that for future agricultural use. And the agribusiness is a huge opportunity for us to grow our ability to not only produce grains and legumes and other things in our community, but turn that into edible products throughout our city. And that's already happening with Canada Bread and Maple Leaf Meats. There's more room in that particular cluster for more. And we already ship and transport a lot of grains and soybeans and products out of our port already. So the infrastructure is there, and we need to realize the potential of it.
Okay. If there's one thing that we advocate for as a chamber, it's, let's have a concentrated vision on where this community is going. Give me an understanding of what you think Hamilton is going to look like 10 years, 20 years from now, regardless of whether you're mayor at that time or not. What do you want to see out of this community?
I seriously doubt I'm going to last that long, but anyway. I think that's always the desire to have that kind of forward-thinking vision. So if I paint a picture from 20 years from now, I see 100,000 more people in the city of Hamilton. I see an opportunity for us to offload the traffic that comes with that onto public transportation, and I think if it's LRT, I think most of the people in this room, if they're nearby, would be happy to use it, because people think that rail is sexy and bus is not so much. And the practical reality is that in communities where they've introduced LRT, they have seen not only their public transportation numbers go through the roof, they've seen the investment in their city also go through the roof. And you don't have to look too far for examples of that right now. Kitchener-Waterloo is in the midst of a boom, and part of that boom is predicated on their introduction of light rail transit right through the heart of their city through Highway 8 between Kitchener and Waterloo. So if I look down the road, I see a fabulous light rail transit line. I see renewal happening on King Street. I see growth happening through all parts of our city, from Water to Stony Creek. Hopefully smart growth on existing infrastructure so that we can maximize the revenue benefit for the city of Hamilton and generate the kind of vibrant city through arts and cultural funding. And I have to mention, and I didn't mention this earlier, that we put $500,000 more, and the mission is to go to $1 million on the arts funding. The Community Foundation has actually topped that up. They'll be administering $300,000 this year in terms of arts funding. And then as we increase our numbers, they'll be decreasing theirs, but it gives us an opportunity to work on a higher number for future arts and cultural funding as well. So, yes, thank you. Where's the fund? Is that Terry Cook leading the way? Must be. So you know what? I see a vibrant city in our future. I see a lot of interconnectivity. I see a lot of opportunity to live in Hamilton, work in Toronto, and vice versa, or Oakville, or wherever. I don't see a bedroom community. I see a vibrant work environment that I think people are going to be attracted to.
One of the other things that we're doing as a chamber is really trying to mobilize the private sector and the business community and the community of leadership behind contributing to the city building efforts of so many, the province, the municipality, and hopefully the feds are coming on board as well. What do you need from us in order to realize that vision?
Positive support, I think. We previously had the Jobs and Prosperity Collaborative in place, which I think has seen its day, and a lot of good work has come out of that. But I think the collective positive support and the positive comments from people and making sure that we stay on a positive track rather than on a negative track, I think is going to be critically important for our city to move forward. So, it's going to be easy to be a detractor or negative on some of these issues, but overall, I think we're all heading in the same direction. I think Hamilton is on a fantastically good positive curve. So the support of the Chamber and support of business, we need to make sure that we are as efficient as possible as a civic administration, but at the same time, I think applications, when they come in, ought to be fulsome and complete. So some responsibility does lie on the development and promotional community to make sure that they also do their homework. But at the same time, we realize that this is a partnership. So working together, working with the Chamber, working with industry, working with LIUNA, working with Port Authority, I think we can go miles.
All right, so we want everybody to have a productive Thursday, so we want to get everybody out of here on time. As Vasuda mentioned, we couldn't do this without, of course, the support of so many people here today. Thank you once again for making this the highest attended Mayor's Breakfast ever. We truly appreciate that. And again, we thank the support of Union Gas and Bell. And Bell would like to thank you this morning. And to do that, I have Lena DeMarco, who's the Regional Director of Community Affairs for Bell. She is the face of Bell. She comes to all of the Chamber events all throughout Southern Ontario. And I know within the Chamber network, we're so appreciative of Bell's contributions. Lena, please thank the Mayor.
Thanks.
Thank you, Keenan. Good morning, everyone, and distinguished guests. Thank you, Mayor Eisenberger. This morning's session was very informative. I know I speak for everyone here when I say that you have given us a lot of reasons to be optimistic about the future of the city. My job with Bell takes me to many communities around the GTA and beyond, and I can tell you that Hamilton is one of the most dynamic cities that I know. On behalf of all my colleagues who are here today this morning, let me say it is our pleasure at Bell to support Mayor Eisenberger and this morning's event. We are also proud to support the important work of the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce. Today was about the future, and like you, we were very excited to hear the Mayor's plans and priorities. As a company that has been part of this community for well over a century now, it's important for us to understand your needs today and into the future, because we want to continue to be your partner as Hamilton continues to grow. Because when business people are being successful, innovating, and growing their business, everyone wins. The entire community is a better place to live. So thank you to all of you and to the Chamber for being such a champion of this community and its businesses, large and small. It's a privilege for us at Bell to help honor those local success stories, to better understand how your community is growing so that we can deepen our relationship, our partnership, and better serve your municipalities, your businesses, and your residents. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. The only thing I want to plug from the Chamber's perspective is we have our Bay Area Economic Summit coming up in conjunction with the Burlington Chamber of Commerce and the City of Burlington, and the two mayors are acting as honorary co-chairs. Each of you has an invitation on your table for that. And since the mayor started talking, it's brightened up considerably outside. I think that's a harbinger of things to come. I'm very optimistic about what's coming out today. I wish you all a great Thursday. Thank you.